I'm going to be reacting to Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull Talks Aqualung. So here we go.
The song was Aqualung. The year was 1971. I'm Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, and these are the sounds of the time.
I'll probably have to pause it occasionally, but...
The 1970s have been called a decade of transition, and perhaps nowhere is that more evident than in music. After all, this is the generation that gave us punk, disco, and the heights of progressive rock.
Yep.
The sound was experimental, and the concepts tended toward the artistic. Few bands rode the wave of the moment more than Jethro Tull.
It was the beginning of that era of improvised music slipping into the popular format. So it came via blues, it came via black American blues, and it had impacted upon a whole generation of young middle-class white British boys, most of whom went to art colleges.
The sound, born in the late stages of the psychedelic 60s, would embody the experimental nature of the 70s. The same decade that would see the questioning of authority become the norm. From college campuses to the White House, also saw musicians straying far from rock's roots in search of that new sound.
We were enamored of this rather loose, slightly rebellious, and very free-flowing music that just seemed to erupt from the soul.
I could listen to his voice all day. I love
the
his
70s also
voice
meant
too.
changing some of the most basic rules of rock. From the length of a song to the signature, even that rock staple of a guitar front and center.
I was like many of my teenage peers back in the mid-60s. You know, I wanted to be an electric guitar player. I mean, that was the sexy thing to do. Everybody wanted to play, you know, a Fender Strat or a Gibson Les Paul and be a guitar hero.
Jethro Tull was the name of an 18th century British agriculturalist.
Yep.
He had no real meaning for Ian Anderson and his bandmates, yet it stuck. Whatever they called themselves, by the time the 60s gave way to the 70s, the band once called the New Cream had developed their own sound, and it started with a flute.
The flute was a choice, not because it was particularly thought through. It was just hanging on the wall of a music store, and I had my battered Fender Stratocaster and part exchanged it for a flute and a Shure Unidyne 3 microphone. And those two things, the flute and the microphone, served me over the next year or two in establishing Jethro Tull as a band with some emerging and growing popularity.
Even if Anderson admits his finger placement on the flute was wrong until the 1990s, the instrument would take the lead on the band's biggest commercial success, the 1971 album Aqualung.
At the very beginning of Aqualung, not that it was played on the flute, but was the classic guitar line, and that began by me playing that on acoustic guitar.
I didn't know that.
On acoustic guitar in a Holiday Inn bedroom, trying not to wake up anybody in the room next door. But in my head, it was da 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 da. So when I, then ran through that and showed the notes and the chords to Martin Barr, it became immediately something different.
Jethro Tull's sound would continue to evolve with the times as the 70s came to a close and progressive rock lost its place on the radio. They would shift closer to the folk rock sound, finding that success in music tends to shift with the tastes and the times.
Well, inspiration is it is a mixture of inspiration, that sense of suddenly the time is right and you are visited by the muse. It's not something you choose to do, but you just have this creative moment. a creative flush, and that's nice when it happens. But I think more often than not, more than 50% of the time, you've actually got to go out and meet the muse halfway, because if you don't step outside of yourself and your comfort zone and go looking for that inspiration, it's probably not going to come.
It was a really good interview. I really enjoyed that. I had somebody request that to me on Facebook because they know I want to do not just music, but I want to do interviews. And that was a really, really good interview. I could listen to Ian Anderson talk, sing, play the flute or the guitar all day because I'm a big fan of Jethro Tull. And thank you all for watching. And if you all enjoyed this, please like and comment and share and follow. Subscribe. Only if you want to, though. But that was really good. I really I knew most of what he was talking about, but there were a few things he mentioned that I didn't know. So it's kind of informational and informative and educational for me as well. Learning about just the history of like music in different genres and history of like his music and ways, just everything. And I think I read somewhere, I saw an interview, an Ian Anderson interview, I think it was in 83 or 84, where he said, when he found out the name, or what the name, or who Jethro Tull was, like the actual person, I think he said it was a man who invented a seed drill. That's what I thought. So, that was interesting as well. But, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for the next reaction video.